Am I the a-hole stories? Am I the a-hole for telling my dad he's not entitled to a relationship with me? When I, 27 female, was around 10, my parents divorced. It was a messy thing, no one ever told me the reason and I do not really care. My mom won custody because she was able to prove in court that my father was an unfit parent. My father never took it well, and it showed whenever I had visitation at his house, 2 weekends a month. Instead of spending time with me, he would spend hours playing video games, order takeouts, and the only time he would ever take me somewhere was when my grandma forced him. Needless to say, I never had a very close relationship with him. Then once I got older he started to bring up a college fund he had set aside for me, and he always said that if my grades stayed up and I do well in school, the money would be mine, and I did just that. I got good grades, was part of many clubs in school and never got into trouble. I was basically the kid your parents brought up when they were comparing you to your friends. In my senior year my dad got married to his current wife. It was a beautiful and extravagant ceremony. I'm pretty sure some of the arrangements were more expensive than my phone, but whatever, I didn't think much of it. It wasn't until I went to talk to my dad about my college fund, that I found out he had used it to pay for his ceremony. I was in disbelief when he said it, and the more he explained, the more I wanted to cry. He didn't even apologize. He said it with all causality of, "Oh, you were looking for that thing you left in the fridge? Sorry, I ate it." When he realized that I was upset he turned it around on me and told me that I was being selfish, and that I was not entitled to his money. Luckily, I got scholarship that covered my entire tuition. Also, my mom and stepdad also had a fund set aside for me. They apparently knew my dad would pull that on me, so I was able to go to college without a lot of debt. Since then, I've been distant from my dad. Not gonna lie, I feel conned. If the money was always his, why did he bother mentioning it to me? I don't care if he used it or not, but to promise someone something, hold it over their heads for years, and not give it to them when you should because they're not entitled to it, is just a way too lengthy way to say that you're an unreliable a-hole in my eyes. My dad has tried to reconcile, but he still claims that I was not entitled to that money, and even says that the money was not needed because I got a scholarship. The last time he said that to me was when I was at his house visiting my new baby brother, and I got so damn annoyed that I said, "I'm not entitled to your money but you're also not entitled to a relationship with me, so I guess we're in a stalemate here." I guess that hurt him because he got quiet until I left. I've been remembering what I said for a while, so I wonder if I was way too out of line in my statement? I was annoyed and wanted him to stop bringing it up, but I didn't want to hurt him. Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. 1. He was the one who brought it up and gave you the expectation. 2. Your mom already knew he would pull something like this. 3. He was an unfit parent based on your representation of him. He is an ass who is trying to gaslight you into thinking you're the entitled one, especially when he spent it on a ceremony that was one day. I'm the stepdad in this scenario. It sucks. My daughter is 8 so she's just old enough to start recognizing that her bio dad sucks. She still gets her hopes up sometimes, but her mom and I are always prepared for the inevitable heartbreaks when she does. The stepdad in the story is more of a father than the bio father. It's sad how often that happens. I'm the mom in this scenario, with a 6-year-old who's going to realize her dad hardly does the bare minimum real soon. I have a boyfriend who engages on a deeper level with her than her dad does. I'm hopeful he'll be the stepdad like you someday. Not the a-hole at all. He had a tuition fund that he told you would be yours, then turned around and wasted it. Sure, you don't have a legal right to it. I don't know for certain what the law is where you are, but here it's his money, but that doesn't mean he's not the a-hole for doubling back on his promise. Cut him out, you don't owe him anything. He keeps bringing it up? Okay, wow, you have been way more patient with him than I would have been. Not the a-hole. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for grounding my son for referring to his uncle as Michael as opposed to Uncle Mike? My 12-year-old son hit that snarky stage, and I get it. It doesn't really bug me for him to push some boundaries here and there with me or his mother. My brother is a frequent guest and my sons refer to him as Uncle Mike. All of a sudden, my 12-year-old started calling him Michael, and was doing it to be a jerk to him. My brother is very good to my kids, especially my 12-year-old. It's not that he wants to be referred to as Uncle Mike, it's that my son is doing it to be disrespectful, the same way a kid calls his teacher by their first name instead of Mr. or Mrs. whatever. My younger 2 sons started calling him Michael and being a bit rude. I explained to my 12-year-old that he is to refer him as Uncle Mike or Uncle Michael. The next time he sees my brother, he says "Hey Michael." Then pauses for a second and sarcastically says, "Oh, I mean Uncle Michael." I ended up grounding him this weekend from friends and internet. My brother knows my son was being a jerk, but thinks I am an a-hole and power tripping. I'm just trying to nip this a-hole 12-year-old boy behavior in the bud, since he's using it as a proxy to be an a-hole. He can call my brother whatever he wants when he's 18. Edit: my brother isn't bothered by being called Michael, but he is bothered that my son is doing it to be an a-hole to him. It's the tone and delivery, and you call your friend by their first name, not an adult family member. And since my 12-year-old is the oldest, the other two have followed suit. We're American. Not the a-hole. This isn't as bad as calling your mom and dad by their first names, but it is definitely in that same disrespectful tone. The intentions of your son is to hurt or disrespect another family member by referring to only his first name. It's the intention that matters, and this should be explained to your son, even if Uncle Michael is okay with just being called Mike. It's important for him to realize this lesson, because this could potentially lead him to do this for teachers or other figures in his life when he wants to act out in that way. Being a parent is not being an a. This isn't as bad as calling your mom and dad by their first names. Honest question, what's wrong with that? I have done that since forever. In fact, the only times I don't is when I am ironically referring to them as father or mother. That it's done to disrespect them seems circular logic. It can only be used to disrespect them because they insist to use a particular word to describe them. You're the a-hole. It's weird you're forcing your kid to call someone uncle. I call my uncles by their first names and my aunts by their first names. He is only doing it for a reaction, so just don't give it any attention and he will stop. Not the a-hole. It's not about that even. It's the principle of a 12-year-old disrespecting adults to their faces and smirking about it. Not the a-hole. A lot of people are basing their answers on what they consider to be respectful or not, which honestly doesn't matter here. What matters is the OP's respect system that they've provided for their child to adhere to, which is in no way egregious or uncommon. They set a boundary. The preteen is testing it. The most caring response as a parent is to address the boundary pushing. In the grand scheme of things, the punishment is insanely innocuous. Yeah, I'm so confused why all the top posts say OP is an a-hole for having their kid call their uncle blank. I do that, it's common practice. Next story is titled, "Am I the a-hole? I won't forgive my uncle for making my grandma's life a living hell." To give you some backstory, my uncle has been with 3 abusive and manipulative wives, and they have taken a toll on him. He used to be a happy, loving, all-around good guy, but he is just a shell of that now. His current wife is horrible. She spreads rumors about my grandmother and is trying to turn everyone against her. If you met her, she is the nicest person. Yet her own daughter sent a harm threat to my grandmother. A daughter that has never met my grandmother, by the way. She also used my Facebook post saying, "You are amazing, and if anyone thinks anything different, they probably have their own problems to deal with," as my grandma saying that she had problems. Even though I, not my grandma, sent that to my grandma's page. The conflict that ruined our relationship comes from my grandfather's dementia, soon to be confirmed as Alzheimer's. My grandpa had gone to his primary care, who thought he wasn't showing enough signs of Alzheimer's to diagnose him with it officially. My uncle was furious with this and was trying to force my grandma to force him to get a second opinion. Even though it was my grandpa who said he didn't want a second opinion, and that he trusted his doctor's opinion. Keep in mind this was very early in the disease and it was hard to tell. My uncle, who in my opinion has been completely brainwashed by his wife, had also been belittling my grandma, saying that she didn't deserve my grandpa. So obviously she said it's his choice, and saw no reason to question it. The incident happened on Thanksgiving. This was before the virus. My uncle cornered my grandma in my bedroom and started yelling at her. Eventually saying, "If he has Alzheimer, it's going to be your fault." Making my grandma cry. This is when my grandpa and my mother figured out what was happening and went to save her. My grandpa made it very clear he loved his wife, and it was his decision to not get a second opinion. That if he had a problem with that, to talk to him and not attack his wife. Then my mother proceeded to kick him the hell out of her house. It ruined Thanksgiving. Today my family is recovering. My grandparents have forgiven their child, and my mother has allowed him back to family holidays. I, on the other hand, refuse to forgive him. What he and his wife have done to my grandmother is unforgivable. They made her life hell, and I can't find it in my heart to forgive them. My grandparents may forgive their son, my mother may tolerate his presence, but I will have nothing to do with him. My grandpa has asked I forgive him, but I am not ready for that. I recognize they didn't do anything to me directly other than using my loving message as a weapon, but I still can't forgive them even if my grandma does. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. I don't really blame you. You also can't just forgive someone out of nowhere because someone tells you to. Only you can do it when you are ready. Not the a-hole. Your grandparents and mother have forgiven him for reasons of their own, but you certainly don't have to join them on absolving him of wrongdoing for tormenting your grandmother. All you have to do is be polite on the rare occasions that you have to deal with your uncle, which will only happen when you are visiting your grandparents. You don't have to forgive him for being a cruel and nasty jerk to his mother, and you certainly shouldn't forget, "Hey, Grandpa, I'll be polite because you asked me to, but that's as far as I can go." I do not forgive him for purposefully hurting and insulting my grandmother, and I will never forget what he did. Now that I know that he is willing to be cruel and unfair to his own mother, I will never see him in the same way. I cannot like or respect anyone who acts like that. Info: there is a lot of missing information in your post, and a lot of seemingly random details that don't fit into the narrative. How exactly did your uncle ruin your grandmother's life? Just by yelling at her on Thanksgiving? Why does your aunt hate your grandmother so much? Is it just because of her not forcing your grandfather to get a second opinion on his dementia, or does she claim to have other reasons? How exactly is she abusive? Why did her daughter send your grandmother a threat? What does she think your grandmother did to deserve that? Is your grandfather of sound enough mind to be making his own medical decisions? In your post, you described his dementia as soon to be confirmed as Alzheimer's, which leads me to believe the initial diagnosis was wrong, which would mean your uncle's frustrations were justified, even if him yelling at your grandmother was not. Also, maybe it's just me, but the part about the Facebook message made no sense at all. My grandma made a comment about how she would be willing to pay for a tutor for her daughter. She took high offense to this, and it started the crap storm. I don't know why she took such offense, but everything my grandmother said after that was taken in a negative way by my uncle's wife. Then it came out they don't agree politically, and that just added fuel to the flame. The wife found out that she was in the minority on the political views of the family and used her own family's political views to alienate her. My uncle allowed this, and I'm guessing introduced her to that side of the family. The harm threat was a politically motivated one from the daughter. I didn't want this post to become political, so I didn't add that. Also, it would have become too long. As for him being right about the Alzheimer's, he was. I have accepted that. How he went about getting that second opinion only worsened the situation. You need to talk to them calmly, not scream at their wife who you have already proven you disliked. I know it came from a good place. It was just wrong how he went about it. My uncle would only speak to my grandmother to get to my grandfather. He would often tell my grandfather that he should divorce her, and that took a toll on her mentally. Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for getting a 15-year-old kid, and his dad, arrested on felony charges? Early February, my bike was stolen from a cafe in broad daylight. A friend told me they found my bike listed on Marketplace, and sure enough there it was. They'd stripped the stickers, saddlebags, lights, basically anything that was easy to remove and identifiable, but I could still tell it was mine. I messaged them asking if they still have it and say yes. We agree to meet up at a truck stop with the friend who tipped me off about the listing to look at the bike. I ask her about it. She has no idea about anything about the bike, claiming she's selling it for her son. After a few minutes of stringing her along and pretending to inspect the bike, I say, "Oh yes, this is the bike that your son stole from restaurant. I'll be taking it back now." She screams that we're robbing her, tries to create a scene, and then my friend calls the cops for real. Cops arrive, question both parties, but she avoids responsibility by feigning ignorance, although the son is arrested for grand larceny. 2 days later, the kid's father calls me. My number was listed publicly on my Facebook, and tries to talk me into dropping the charges or because this would ruin his life, and kids make mistakes. I tell him that the situation is no longer in my control, lie, and then tries to convince me to put in a good word for his son in hopes for leniency. I shut him down immediately, and he proceeds to get angry, yell at me for a bit and threaten me if I don't do as he asks, oblivious to the fact that the conversation is recorded. I turn the recording over to the police, and dad is arrested for intimidating a witness. The next day, the mother calls me from a blocked number and tries to talk to me, but as soon as she identifies herself, I tell her to screw off and not call me again, or I'll be reporting her to the police as well, and she hangs up. She then contacts my wife via Facebook, sending a massive wall of text claiming that I'd ruined her son's life over nothing and how her and her children were going to be out on the street because they relied on their husband's income. My wife is now upset and thinks I took the situation too far, as do most people I've told about this, but I disagree. I don't think my actions were unreasonable. This isn't a little kid making a mistake because they don't know the difference between right and wrong. This is a teenager that stole something because he's a little bastard, and a family that not only didn't make the kid do the right thing, but willfully participated in concealing and trying to profit off of their child's criminal behavior. They're horrible people, and I don't feel any remorse for giving horrible people what they deserve. Not the a-hole. A crime was committed and you reported it. Also, the kid's a juvenile. This can be expunged with good behavior when he's an adult in most places. And the supposedly adult dad needs to learn that intimidating a witness is, in fact, a crime. Not the a-hole. As does mom. WTF putting your witness intimidation in writing, when your own conversation already busted your son and your husband's conversation got him arrested. At this point, she deserves to be arrested for being bad at thievery. OP, you're not the a-hole, make sure a screenshot of that message gets to the prosecutor. Nope. It is a family of thieves. Mom was participating, dad was participating. Screw them. Not the a-hole. I can't get over dad the fence, and mom the courier. I don't even need to read this. Unless you're a shady cop that wrongly arrested innocent people or the DA that wrongfully charged them, you're never the a-hole for reporting a real crime. Not the a-hole. Edit. To all the people throwing out all kinds of hypotheticals in response to this, I did actually read the post. I'm sick of "am I the a-hole" posts where someone is the victim of an actual crime, like having their bike stolen like OP, and then asking if they're the a-hole for reporting it. Of course, they're not the a-hole for reporting that someone stole their property and then threatened them about it. And that's it for this video, guys. If you have thoughts to share, leave a comment below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you like this content. I'll catch you in the next one. Good day everyone.